Were these young YouTube stars tortured and abused to get them to perform for the camera?
A woman who adopted 7 children and used them to make social media videos.
This video might be a little scary for you younger guys. We have to clean, we have to make her food. We do something wrong, she doesn't feed us for like 2 or 3 days.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Prepare yourselves for today's case. This is a very dark and disturbing case, and truly I do not even know how this case happened, because back in 2019 a YouTube channel called Fantastic Adventures was blowing up, and I mean blowing up. Every single video was getting millions of views. The channel had 800,000 subscribers, so we are talking a very large YouTube channel here. However, there was a very dark, sick and twisted secret behind this YouTube channel. The main stars of this YouTube channel were 7 young children, and every single one of their YouTube videos, it would show these children going on some sort of adventure, going on some sort of like challenge or task.
Look, there's a shopping cart. All right, get in.
And each one of these children were vulnerable in their own way. Most had a disability of some sort, and they were all soon either adopted or fostered by a woman called Michelle Hobson, who to the outside world seemed like an incredible human being, because she was taking in all of these children, all of these vulnerable children, and she turned these children into YouTube stars, and these children were living their dreams. But was that the reality? Of course not. Because behind the camera, behind closed doors, Michelle Hobson was a monster. And what she put these children through is absolutely despicable. And she did it all to make money. So that is what we are talking about today. So just prepare yourselves for today's case, because it is a very heavy case. Most of this video is going to be very difficult to listen to, so just be mindful of that, and let's jump in. Michelle Hobson was born in June of 1971. We don't know her exact date of birth, so she is either a Cancer or a Gemini. And we actually don't really know anything about Michelle's background, which is incredibly frustrating. She was born in the USA, but we do not know what state she was born in. We don't know her upbringing, like did she face any abuse or hardship in her life? We just don't know. The only thing we know about Michelle's upbringing is that when she was in school, particularly high school, she was described as very confident, very outgoing. She was described as a popular girl. And alongside of her in high school was a boy called Gino Valero, and he has described himself as very nerdy. He was not a part of like the popular kids group at school, and he knew Michelle in school, but Michelle didn't know him. Michelle never paid Gino any attention whatsoever, and the reason why I'm telling you about Gino to begin with is because he does come back up in the story in a pretty big way. And then after Michelle left school, so she's still in her late teens, she met a man with the surname Hackney. We do not even know this man's first name. All we know about him is that Michelle meets him, she settles down, she gets married, and she has 2 children with this man whose surname is Hackney quite quickly, and she has 2 sons called Logan and Ryan Hackney. And Logan and Ryan play very significant roles in today's case, so remember them. And then roughly around a year after Michelle gave birth to her second son, Ryan, she's currently about 21 years old, she gets a divorce and she moves out of the house, and she does not take her sons with her. Both sons remain in full custody of their father, and the details of this custody arrangement haven't been made public, so I can't tell you why Michelle doesn't have custody or visitation or anything like that to her sons. Don't know. And it wasn't too long after her divorce that Michelle reconnects with a guy from her high school called Gino Valero, the nerdy kid from her school. And Gino, since he had left school, he had had it pretty rough. He joined the Marines straight out of high school, and he was suffering with PTSD, and he turned to substances to cope with this. He was drinking a lot, doing a lot of drugs. He was also gambling a lot as well. And one day, a mutual friend of Michelle Michelle and Gino's was like, hey, I'm going to set you two up. I think you're really going to hit it off. So Michelle and Gino, they went on this blind date, and Gino was like, oh my God, this is Michelle from high school. This is the popular girl, like the most popular girl in high school. Like, why is she out on a date with me, the nerdy kid? But they went on this blind date and they hit it off. Gino said that Michelle just oozed charisma. She was so confident. She was so charming. She gave off this sense of authority. She was very powerful and demanding, and Gino was all into it. And Michelle was actually really good for Gino because she helped him through his current struggles. She got him through his substance addictions. She cleaned him up. She helped him get a job and like get back on his feet. And Gino was really grateful for Michelle for all of her help. And after a year or so of dating, things got serious. Michelle fell pregnant and Gino proposed because of this, and they went on to get married. However, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing, let's just say that. Because the wedding day, it came and that went smoothly. But then the day after the wedding, and I literally mean the day after the wedding, Gino was in for a shock of a lifetime. Because literally the next day, the very first morning into their new marriage, Michelle turned up at their home with two young boys next to her. And these boys were currently aged 2 and 4. And obviously it's Logan and Ryan, her two biological sons from her previous marriage. But Gino didn't know. Gino didn't know that Michelle already had 2 children. Gino didn't even know that Michelle had been previously married. So Gino turns to Michelle, his new wife, and is like, who are these 2 young boys? Like, what is going on? And Michelle just looks him dead in the eye and says, oh, these are my 2 sons. And to say that Gino was stunned would be an understatement. He was, first of all, so confused because he had been dating Michelle for over a year at this point. They were now married. How has she been able to keep this from him? But also, why would she keep it from him? Like, what was the point? And this is like red flag number 1, ding, ding, ding. Because throughout their entire relationship, every single time Gino went over to Michelle's home, Michelle made sure that she had gone round her home and taken down any photos of her 2 sons to pretend like they didn't exist. And it's like, who does this? But I think the biggest thing is, why would she do this? Was she ashamed of her sons? Like, what is her angle here? And I think it just comes down to the fact that Michelle just likes to portray this like perfect image of herself, and she likes to manipulate the truth. And remember this, because this is a habit that Michelle displays a lot. So after the initial shock that Michelle actually had 2 sons from a prior relationship, Michelle was just like, well, Gino's my husband now, I can do whatever I want. And Gino was absolutely horrified that Michelle had kept the fact that she had 2 sons from him, that she was previously married. He was so annoyed that their whole relationship was built on lies. But he made the decision to stay in the marriage because they also had a child together. They had a daughter together. So once that initial shock and everything had settled down and Gino and Michelle settled into married life, this is when Michelle's personality just completely changed. Michelle became incredibly controlling, manipulative, emotionally abusive. She wouldn't let Gino do anything without her approval. He wasn't allowed to leave the house unless she allowed it. He was forced to do everything around the home, like all of the chores. He did kind of become a prisoner in his own home. And then one day, after so long of putting up with this, Gino filed for divorce. And Michelle was like, okay then, no big deal. She packed up all of her belongings, took their daughter and moved to the state of Arizona. And I don't know how she managed to do this, but she got full custody of their daughter. Gino wasn't even allowed visitation. So Michelle now banned Gino from ever seeing their daughter again. So now Michelle and her daughter, they've moved to Arizona, and she jumps into another relationship very quickly, gets remarried. This is when she changes changes her surname to Hobson, Michelle Hobson. This new marriage, they go on to have a daughter themselves who is called Megan Hobson, and Megan plays a very significant role in today's case as well. And then a few years pass. Michelle goes from her 20s into her 30s, and we don't really know too much about what goes on in her life. All we know is that she does get another divorce. And in the late 2000s, Michelle is now a single mom. She is living with her 2 biological daughters. Her 2 biological sons are still in the custody of their father. And it was at this point that Michelle makes a very significant decision, which will play a huge role in the rest of today's case, because Michelle decides that she wants to start fostering and adopting children. And we don't know what Michelle's initial intentions were behind this decision. Like, did she want a big family? Was she doing it out of the kindness of her heart? We will never 100% truly know what her intentions were, but it has been reported, and this is probably the reason, it was for financial gain. At this point in Michelle's life, she was unemployed, and it is thought that she wanted to foster children to get money from the government. And it started in the late 2000s. Michelle started by fostering 1 child, and then it turned into fostering another child, and then another one, and then another one, and Michelle saw the money start to pour in. Michelle was fostering more and more children. She even adopted some of these children full-time as well. And the children's ages were approximately between the ages of 3 and 12 when they first got to Michelle, and she would sometimes have up to 10 children at a time in her home. And apparently, and I want to really stress that, apparently, Michelle was fully vetted by DCS. Apparently, they ran full background checks on her. They did home visits. They did a whole home study, and they decided that Michelle was a perfect candidate to be a foster parent. And it wasn't long until Michelle started fostering children that other families, quote, did not want to take. And the children that Michelle usually fostered had some sort of special needs or disability, whether that was learning difficulties or a physical disability, just children that need special care and attention and a little bit more time. For example, Michelle fostered one girl who was legally blind. She was also fostering other children that had severe intellectual deficits. And people praised Michelle for taking in all of these vulnerable children. They literally thought that she was an angel sent to earth because she was doing this out of the kindness of her heart. And Michelle built what everybody else thought was this like perfect little family. She would take all of the children out and literally parade them around the neighborhood and wanting to say to everyone, look at how amazing I am because I'm taking in all of these children. She wanted to portray the perfect image of herself and of her family. But behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. Because as the family grew and grew, and as Michelle was fostering more and more children, she was struggling to keep control over all of the children. And she soon started to seriously neglect the children. And this all started with Michelle underfeeding the children. Because Michelle was receiving quite a lot of money per child from the government to look after the children. But obviously that money is supposed to be spent on the children. But Michelle didn't want to do that. She would rather keep the money for herself. So she started not feeding the children enough food. She also was terrible at keeping up with their hygiene. She would never buy sanitary items. She would never bathe the younger children. She wouldn't let the older children take showers. And it was definitely a control thing. She wanted to control the children. She wanted to control how much they ate, etc. But I also think it was to save money. I think she just wanted money. Like, she didn't buy toothpaste. The children were never allowed to brush their teeth. And then because she didn't have much control over the children because there were so many, she started to physically abuse the children to keep them in line. And this physical abuse, it started by Michelle punching, kicking the children, shoving them. And she would do this every single time a child would break a rule or just do something that Michelle didn't like. And she would do this to children as young as 3 years old, which is just absolutely horrendous. But if that is not bad enough, another way Michelle would gain control over the children is that she would lock them in their rooms for most of the day. She literally wanted the children out of sight, out of mind. She went round her home and she installed locks on the outside of the doors so she could lock the children in and the children couldn't get out, which is just crazy that she's installing locks on all of the doors. So whenever the children were driving her crazy, she would make all of the children go into their rooms and she would lock the children in their rooms and just leave them there. She would keep the children locked in their rooms for hours, sometimes days, and she would never let the children out, which means that the children didn't have access to food or water or a bathroom. Sometimes she would lock the children inside their rooms naked. Occasionally, she would put diapers on the children because, you know, they don't have access to a bathroom. So because of this, the children ended up covered in their own urine, their own feces. They became incredibly malnourished, dehydrated. They were all severely underweight. And I also just want to mention right now that we don't know the identities of any of the children in this case, which is why I'm not saying any names. Their identities have been protected. So we don't have any names. There are a few images and videos out there, but most of the time their faces are blurred. And this has obviously all been done for their privacy and their protection. So I just wanted to make that clear now. That's why I'm not saying any names. And you might be thinking, because this is extreme abuse, like you only have to look at these children to know that something is not right at home. So you might be thinking, okay, so how is Michelle getting away with this? Because she is fostering up to 10 children at a time. How has this been allowed to happen? And we will get back to that shortly. We will, because it will make your blood boil. But before we talk about that, we need to talk about something that is very significant to today's case, and that is the YouTube channel Fantastic Adventures. Because at this point, it is now 2010 and onwards. Social media, especially YouTube, is just blowing up. Influencers were on the rise. YouTubers were on the rise. Family channels especially were popping up everywhere. And it was around this time where people started to realize that you could make money from social media, especially YouTube. And we all know how important money is to Michelle. So Michelle started seeing all of these family vloggers and family channels on YouTube, and she thought to herself, hang on a minute, I have all of these kids here. Like, I literally have so many kids at my disposal. I also have full control over all of these children. Maybe I could get them on YouTube and actually make some money off of these children. So this is what Michelle did. She created a YouTube channel. She called it Fantastic Adventures. And the whole concept behind Fantastic Adventures was to show the children having fun. It was to show all of the children having these crazy cool adventures. And it was content made by children for other children, because I will insert some clips of the channel in this video. The YouTube channel has been taken down now, but there are still some clips floating around on the internet.
This video might be a little scary for you younger guys. If you're not sure, ask an adult.
And you can tell by the content that it is pretty amateur. It is directed solely for children. It's not like a family vlogging channel where there's adults in the content and it's being made for other adults, really.
3, 2, 1, go!
And the kind of content that Michelle was forcing her children to create was very scripted. It wasn't like a family vlogging channel where it's supposed to show the authentic, genuine day of children. No. It was none of that. It was very, very scripted.
Look, there's a shopping cart. What does it do? I don't know. All right, get in. Let's do this.
The children would play various characters and they would role play. They would take part in all of these skits and just have these fake like adventures. They were basically child actors. That is basically what they were. A lot of the content, the children would dress up as like various superheroes. They would have toy guns running around, like doing missions and challenges and having to save this person or blah, blah, blah.
Yes, we won!
And the videos contained a lot of special effects, like just like laser beams and all stuff like that. It is very amateur, but it's the kind of content that would appeal to other children. But the main thing that Michelle wanted to portray with her content was how happy her children were. She wanted it to look like her children were having the time of their lives with all of these adventures. But sadly, that was not the case, because obviously we know behind closed doors, these children are already suffering terrible physical abuse, emotional abuse. They are being neglected. They are being locked in their rooms for hours, if not days at a time. But you would never know that from just watching the YouTube videos. And if you thought that the abuse that I have already spoken about is bad, well, it is about to get so much worse. Because once this YouTube channel was up and running, Michelle decided to take on the role as like manager slash producer. But of course, given Michelle and her personality, she basically turned into a dictator. Michelle would sit on the sofa all day, chain smoking, barking orders at her foster children, and just ordering them around, making them do absolutely everything. Michelle would not lift a single finger. She would literally just sit on the sofa, barking orders all day, and the children had to do absolutely everything around that house. They had to do all of the chores, all of the cleaning. They also had to raise the other children. So the older children were responsible for raising the younger children. They had to prepare all of Michelle's meals for her and take them to her on the sofa. They had to make all of her drinks. They had to wait on her hand and foot. And that is on top of all of the YouTube work that the children are doing, because the children are also earning the money for the household. So Michelle is literally doing nothing. And of course, the most important role that the children had was the YouTube videos, was playing their role in the YouTube videos to keep on making money. And Michelle had built this like green screen room in her closet, and the children had to spend hours in this green screen closet following Michelle's every command. And when you know about the abuse and everything behind the YouTube videos, it is so obvious when you hear the children's voices, especially. Their voices are so robotic. You can tell by their voices that they are not having fun.
What does it do? I don't know. All right, get in. Let's do this.
And it's just so heartbreaking to watch these YouTube videos, to listen to these children knowing what they are going through behind closed doors. And inside of the house, Michelle kept 2 rooms spotless. Or should I say, the children kept these 2 rooms spotless. They were so clean, pristine. And those 2 rooms were the living room and the kitchen. And that is because the majority of the filming for the YouTube videos took place in the kitchen and the living room. But the rest of the house was filthy. The children's rooms in particular were so dirty. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, they're spending most of their time in their bedroom, locked in there with no access to a toilet. So we can all imagine what the smell would have been like in those rooms and what it would have looked like. These children had to live in squalor. But then they had to turn on a smile and perform in a YouTube video in the very clean living room and kitchen. And it was at this point that something pretty significant happened. And that is that Michelle's youngest biological child, who was Megan, she moved out of the house. She was still in her early teens when she moved out of the house. And I have no idea how much abuse she witnessed of the foster children. Was she a victim of abuse herself? All we know is that Megan moves out of the house. We assume that she goes to live with her father and she is away from this abusive household. But remember Megan, because she does come back up. And then when it came to Michelle's other biological daughter, her oldest daughter, I couldn't find out any information about her. Like, we don't even know her name. So I'm just assuming here, but I'm assuming that she is also no longer living in the house. I mean, she is a bit older, so maybe she moved out before. Like, we just don't know. There are definitely a lot of holes in this case, which is very frustrating. And there's just a lot of information that hasn't been made public. And I will explain why so much hasn't been made public nearer the end of the video. However, even though we don't know much about Michelle's 2 biological daughters, we do know quite a lot about her 2 biological sons. So cast your minds back. Do you remember Michelle's 2 biological sons? The 2 sons that she kept secret from her second husband? Her 2 biological sons, their names are Logan and Ryan. Well, something very important happens right now, because these 2 sons, they are now adults. They are aged 18 and 20. And for some reasons we do not know, these 2 sons move in with Michelle, their mother, and all of the foster/adopted children. And I couldn't find a reason as to why all of a sudden these 2 sons moved to a different state. They moved to Arizona to move in with their mom. Like, why all of a sudden have they done that? It seems very strange to me, because Michelle has literally had nothing to do with them their whole life. But now her 2 adult sons move in with her and they basically become her little sidekicks. Yeah, they're just as bad. They're evil. Logan and Ryan moved in with Michelle and they helped Michelle keep control over the children. They would bark orders at the children, tell them what to do, enforce all of Michelle's ridiculous rules. And Logan and Ryan actually appear in a lot of the YouTube videos, and most of the time they are playing the role as the villains. And in my eyes, in my opinion, Logan and Ryan, they are both adults when they move in with Michelle. They were not raised by Michelle. They were not raised in an abusive environment. Therefore, there is no reason and no excuse why they didn't report the abuse of the children to authorities straight away. They knew about the abuse. They witnessed it, but they did nothing, which in my eyes makes them just as guilty. They are complicit. However, for some strange reason, the law disagrees with me on that one, but we will get back to that because there are so many things in this case that are going to make your blood boil. So right now, we need to talk about exactly how Michelle was getting away with all of this. Because right now, all of these children, they're going to school. They're going to school battered, bruised, malnourished, underweight. Like, it's quite clear from just looking at these children that they are being abused and neglected. So why weren't the teachers reporting anything? Like, why was nothing done? Well, it turns out that the teachers were reporting the abuse, the possible abuse and the neglect of these children. And Child Protective Services ignored every single report. Because over the numerous years that Michelle was fostering and adopting children, there were so many reports made to CPS. The first report came in April of 2011 when a babysitter reported that there was locks on the outside of the children's bedrooms, which is obviously not normal, very concerning. And the babysitter also said that the children were locked in their rooms, left there to just cry. So CPS, they did an investigation and they concluded that the allegations were, quote, unsubstantiated. 2 years later, in May of 2013, another report came into CPS from a teacher where the child told the teacher that Michelle, quote, makes them stand in the corner of the room for hours on end when they return home from school. The children are made to stand there all night in the corner of a room and beg for food because they are so hungry. So the teacher reported this to CPS, but CPS, they did an investigation, but then they found that the allegations were unsubstantiated again. Then, just 1 week later, again in May of 2013, another report came into CPS. This was another report from another teacher that has said that they had been watching these children, and over the course of 3 years, it was very clear that they were being neglected. And the teacher was actually prompted to finally make this call to CPS because the girl that was legally blind that Michelle was fostering, she had one day turned up to school and her shoes were falling apart and there was lots of gunk and everything in her teeth because it was very clear that she wasn't brushing her teeth. So the teacher asked the girl, like, how often do you brush your teeth? And this poor girl hung her head in shame and said, quote, my mom took my toothbrush away from me. The teacher also reported to CPS that Michelle was never involved with the children's lives. She never turned up at school. She never even cared at all, on top of the possible neglect that is going on. So CPS, they listened, they did an investigation, but once again, the findings, the allegations were unsubstantiated. And after this investigation from CPS, Michelle actually took the time to go into school, which she never did before. Michelle went into the school to actually gloat to the teachers that she got away with it. Michelle then promptly pulled her blind foster daughter out of school to be homeschooled. Now, that's a red flag right there. When there are abuse allegations and a parent or a caregiver then pulls that child out of school, I am sorry, no. That right there tells you everything. That right there is basically the parent saying, oh yeah, I am abusing the child, I just don't want you to poke around anymore. Then approximately a year later, in August of 2014, another report was made to CPS. This time it was from daycare staff looking after some of the very younger children. And they reported that the children were unbathed, they were covered in feces, and they had sores, rashes and blisters all over their body that were infected. But yet again, CPS found these allegations unsubstantiated. And then finally in 2015, there were allegations from the children themselves, where they said that Michelle had thrown a can of food at their head, which hit them in the head, caused them to bleed a lot and left a scar. Another one of Michelle's adopted daughters said that she had a black eye and bruising, and the bruising was from, quote, her elbow all the way up to her forehead. That is how much bruising was on her body. Another report was made that a child had a bruise on their forehead, left arm, scrape on their chin, cut on their head, and extensive diaper rash. Another report came in saying that another one of the children was so hungry that they had resorted to drinking baby formula and stealing food from school. And those are all different children, all making different reports. And it is just horrible to think about what these children are going through. And they are literally crying out for help. They are asking for help. They are doing the right things. Teachers and staff that are looking after these children are also doing the right thing. But every single time a report is made to CPS, they do an investigation, which they clearly don't. And every single time their results are the same. The claims are always found to be unsubstantiated. And that is the exact word used on every single report. Unsubstantiated. And if I have to hear that goddamn word one more time, I'm going to lose it. And these reports were made by multiple different people over many years. Why were they all ignored? How is it that not one of these reports was flagged in the system to even question Michelle? Why was she allowed to continue fostering children and adopting them? I just don't understand how CPS allowed this to happen. This is not like some negligence or a one-off human error. This is repeated mistakes. All of the children in Michelle's care are some of the most vulnerable children imaginable, and no one seems to care. So every single time CPS did one of their investigations, Michelle put on this fake act for them. Michelle would get all of the children to clean the whole house so the house was spotless. She would always have a large home-cooked meal ready and waiting for when the CPS worker arrived, so it looked like the children were being fed. Michelle also gave the children scripted lines to say, and the children are basically child actors, so they are used to scripted lines. On top of the fact that they're also terrified of Michelle, and Michelle actually did threaten to kill the children if they didn't lie to CPS. And I'm not being dramatic there. Michelle would go into graphic detail and tell the children exactly how she would kill them if they didn't lie. And the most annoying thing about all of this is that Michelle was allowed to prepare for these investigations and these interviews, because every single time CPS did an investigation, they informed Michelle. They phoned her up and said, "Hey Michelle, we're coming over," which allowed Michelle to clean up, which allowed Michelle to coach the children on what to say. It's like, what is the point of an investigation if you're just going to prompt the abuser? And the reason why Michelle was prompted every single time CPS came over is because she was friendly with the workers, because she adopted and fostered so many children. She got to know the workers. She managed to charm and manipulate people. And therefore, because she was friendly with various CPS workers, she was always warned when they were coming over. And it is also said that Michelle particularly liked to foster and adopt vulnerable children because they were easier for her to control and manipulate. Because if ever one of the children did tell the truth to a CPS worker or just acted in a way Michelle didn't like, Michelle would actually say, "Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. They have learning difficulties." I know, she's exploiting these children. And unbelievably, CPS always took Michelle's word on this. They always just dismissed these children, which makes me so angry. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't know how CPS can just completely disregard these children. How did they overlook all of these vulnerable children and just leave them in the care of Michelle? But if you think that is bad enough, this final incident is possibly the worst. Because it is now December 2017. This is 6 whole years after the first report of abuse came in. So these children shouldn't even still be in the care of Michelle. But one evening, after a particularly bad bout of abuse, one of Michelle's adopted sons ran away. They managed to escape the home without Michelle noticing, and he started running down the street just trying to get as far away from Michelle as physically possible. Michelle was actually bold enough to call the police, reporting her son missing herself, and this poor boy was later discovered by police completely naked in a neighbor's backyard. He was shivering, he was traumatized. It was very clear by looking at him that he was abused. When the police started talking to this little boy told the police everything. They told the police about the abuse, about the neglect, about the environment that they were living in at home. This boy literally said in plain words, I am being abused. I am being starved. I am being beaten. They literally said, please do not take me back to that house. So the boy, because of the state that he was in, he was immediately taken to hospital. And even after everything that the boy has told police, what did the police do? The police invited Michelle to the hospital. They wanted to ask Michelle for her side of the story, which, okay, I get it. They do have to do that. But they allowed Michelle right up to the bedside of this little boy. No, that is not what you do. You keep them apart. You do not allow the possible abuser to go to the victim, especially when they are a child. So the police bring Michelle to the hospital and they actually say, what do you think of this, Michelle? This boy is accusing you of abusing him. And Michelle is just like, oh no, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm an amazing foster parent. He has severe behavioral issues. He's just making it all up. And I think you all know where this is going because unbelievably the police take Michelle's word for it. They don't do any further investigation. They completely disregard the boy. The police actually said that they found Michelle charming, respectable, honest. So they sent the boy back home with Michelle, even though he literally begged them not to do that. It is absolutely disgusting. Literally every authoritative body is failing these children left, right and centre. Following this incident, CPS did go out and do another investigation, and during the visit the officer made the following observations. Now I just want to prepare you all right now. You're going to get really angry. You're going to start shouting at whatever device you're watching this on. You're going to start shouting. So the officer wrote down, quote, kids claim they are locked in the closet upstairs for 90% of the day. There is a reverse lock on the door, so they are unable to get out. The kids also claim they are only fed every 2 to 3 days. And Michelle takes away their water privileges as a form of punishment, as well as hitting them in the head and pulling them out of school. They concluded their report by saying, quote, Michelle Hobson is reported to no CPS, and she will brief the children and tell them she will hurt them if they say anything. So what I have just read to you right there are the exact words that the CPS officer wrote down in their report. The exact words. I am quoting here. That is pretty plain and clear. Black and white. This officer is reporting that there is abuse going on, that there is neglect. But guess what? 6 days later, a second home visit was conducted and the case was closed because the claims were unsubstantiated. How? How are those claims unsubstantiated? In what world are those claims unsubstantiated? And I couldn't find out any details about why the case was closed. I mean, what happened on that second visit to make them think that everything was okay? Which seems pretty suspicious if you ask me. Seems like people want to cover their own backs. And very sadly, things just continue to get worse and worse. Because what happened after this investigation? Because obviously that investigation came about because that child ran away and they went to hospital. Well, Michelle wanted to make sure that the children never did anything like that ever again. She severely punished every single one of her adopted and foster children. She made them stand in the corner of the room with their hands raised in the air for hours. She beat them more often. She would scream and shout at them more often. Michelle would also psychologically and emotionally abuse them as well, make the children feel like they had no one, that they were completely on their own. Because Michelle would say things like, look, you went to the police and they did nothing. They don't care about you. Michelle would tell the children if they ever pulled anything like this again, she would kill them. And again, she would go into graphic detail about how she would kill them. And again, I just want to remind you of the ages of these children. They vary from the ages 3 to 15. Imagine telling young children of those ages that you are going to kill them and say in graphic detail how you are going to do it. Of course, these children believed Michelle. She is quite capable of murder. And Michelle got what she wanted because the children were so terrified and they truly did think that no one could help them, that not one of the children ever came forward ever again about the abuse. So now we get to the spring of 2018. Michelle has been fostering and adopting children for about a decade now, and this is also approximately 7 years after the first reports of abuse started to come in. Well, in the spring of 2018, something very significant to this case took place, and that is Michelle's YouTube channel, Fantastic Adventures, really started to take off. So of course she's been uploading on YouTube for a very long time now, and her channel, it was getting okay views, but it wasn't really getting anywhere. Well, literally just completely out of nowhere, that all changed. You can see it on Social Blade. One week, Michelle's channel is getting like a handful of new subscribers and views. And then all of a sudden, the next week, she's suddenly getting thousands of subscribers. The channel literally overnight just started to get millions of views every single week. Fantastic Adventures quickly grew from 10,000 subscribers to 100,000 subscribers. And by the end of 2018, the channel had 500,000 subscribers, which is insane fast growth. The channel was now getting 1 million plus views on every single video, and it wasn't long until the channel eventually grew to 800,000 subscribers. And along with all of this growth came a lot of money. All of a sudden, Michelle was making 5 figures a month from her children creating YouTube videos. The channel soon held a total of 250 million views. And this channel, I can't stress how successful this channel was. In a lot of these like influencer true crime cases or YouTube crime cases, the YouTuber or influencer, whoever we're talking about, they are semi-successful. It's rare that you talk about a true crime case where the channel is actually huge, where they are hugely successful. The kind of growth and views that the Fantastic Adventures channel was getting reminds me of Ruby Frank and the 8 Passengers channel. I mean, obviously 8 Passengers was so much bigger, but it does remind me of that, and it's kind of like similar content-ish. I mean, it's not, but it's still children being exploited for YouTube videos. But it is just absolutely crazy how big this YouTube channel got. And like I've already said, Michelle values money above all else. So of course, because money was now rolling in, what did Michelle decide to do? Well, she decided to crack the whip even more because she wanted to make even more money. At this point in time, Michelle currently had 7 children living with her, and the ages of these children were 6 to 15. Most of these children had originally started off as foster children, and now most of them were formally adopted. So as soon as the channel became super successful, the first thing that Michelle did was that she pulled every single child out of school. Now every single child was going to be homeschooled, which is just heartbreaking. It really is, because school was probably the one safe haven that all of these children had. It was probably the one time where they actually had company, care, attention, food, because as soon as they went home, they were locked in their rooms for 90% of the time, and they rarely got fed, and they were abused every single time they left their room. But instead, Michelle wanted these children at home 24/7 so they could focus on making YouTube videos and making Michelle money. So of course, because the focus was on YouTube and making videos, no homeschooling actually took place. Michelle created an Instagram account to promote the YouTube channel. She posted biographies about each individual child to tell the audience about each individual child and their interests, blah, blah, blah. She made sure to mention all of the children's struggles in life and their disabilities, their vulnerabilities. And it's like, really, Michelle? Their main struggle in life is you. But you didn't mention that, did you? She even talked about one of her daughters being blind and the fact that Michelle was so amazing and rescued her daughter from an abusive household, gave her her home, and turned her life around. And I'm like, wow. Michelle is really acting like she is the perfect parent, and she is literally playing the victim and the villain at the same time. Michelle also employed her 2 older biological sons, her 2 adult sons that are living in the house, because I haven't mentioned them in a while, but they are still living there. They are still aware of all the abuse. So Michelle hired her 2 older biological sons to be editors for YouTube. She paid them both $5,000 a month, and things were just going like incredibly for the channel. Michelle started doing collabs with other family and child channels. Michelle did a collab with another kids channel called Extreme Toys TV, and they had nearly 9 million subscribers and 5 billion views. The channel is run by the parents Zeb and Tawny, featuring their 2 children, and the parents have said that they had Michelle over and all 7 of her children over to their house to film this collab. And the parents of the other channel said that they had no idea what was going on. They had no idea that the children were being abused or what Michelle was really like. And eventually Michelle's children, they just got completely fed up. I mean, of course they did, but they just got fed fed up of being performing monkeys. They literally didn't have anything in their life that they looked forward to. School was now taken away from them. All they had to do was perform on camera, plaster a fake smile on their face, and they were fed up. So what did Michelle do in response? Well, her punishments became more severe. And I need to warn you now, even though this whole case has been extremely heavy and difficult to listen to, this is where it really does get very extreme now. Because if the children were ever in a bad mood, i.e. a bad mood for filming, like they weren't happy on camera, if they didn't do as they were told, or if they just broke any of the rules that Michelle had, they would be punished severely. One of Michelle's favourite punishments was to lock the children in the green screen room, which was the room that Michelle had made in her closet. And Michelle would just throw the children in this green screen room and just leave them there. She would leave them in there naked, possibly wearing a diaper. Even the older children that didn't need to wear a diaper, they also were made to wear a diaper. And once the children were locked in this green screen room, they were left in there for days. And this room, it's not even a room, it's a closet that's been transformed into a room, so it's very, very small. It was like solitary confinement. The children were left completely in the dark, completely on their own, naked, no food, no water, no bathroom. They were sometimes left in this room for up to 4 days. There was no mattress. They had to just sleep on the cold, hard floor. Urine and feces were everywhere. And there would sometimes be multiple children in this room at one time, and they would huddle together for warmth. But then sometimes Michelle wanted to punish the children by not allowing them to sleep. So she would force the children in this green screen room to stand in the corners with their hands raised above their head. And she would make them stand there all day and all night. Not allowed to sleep, not allowed to move, not allowed to sit down, not allowed to do anything. And Michelle set up cameras in the room so she could monitor them 24/7 to make sure that they didn't move, that they didn't sit down. And if they ever did move, or if they ever did fall asleep standing up, Michelle would go into the room and pinch and twist their skin to wake them up. And I just have no words for this level of abuse. I just don't understand how anyone could do this to children. But then obviously when it came to filming day, Michelle obviously wants the children to perform on camera. She wants the children to play happy. Michelle rolled out the red carpet, or at least she rolled out what her version of the red carpet would be. Michelle would order the children out of the green screen room. She would allow them to have a bath or shower. You know, they have to clean themselves up. And on the morning on filming days, she would reward the children with food. She would be nice to them. She would play these twisted mind games with these children. Michelle did everything that she could to make the children happy, because that is what she wanted the children to portray on camera. And it's just despicable. It really is. These children must have been so confused, because one day they are stuck in a closet. They have no food, no water, no bathroom. And then all of a sudden, Michelle is bringing them out, treating them, being nice, putting on this large buffet of food, showering them with praises, making them feel good. How confusing would that have been? But Michelle was doing this so the children would look forward to those days and they would be happy so they could perform on camera, produce better videos, and make more money. It is just messed up. But we've still got to talk about one of the worst things in this case, because Michelle developed a favorite punishment, and that was pepper spray. Yes, pepper spray became Michelle's weapon of choice. Because if the children ever went into the green screen room, they were covered in pepper spray. And I literally mean covered from head to toe. Every single area of their body, every inch of their skin was covered in pepper spray. She would spray it all over their face, their legs, their torso, their arms. But Michelle particularly liked to focus on the genitals. She had a particular fascination with the genitals on both the girls and the boys. She would force the children to strip naked, and she would focus a lot of the pepper spray on their genitals, and they must have been in excruciating pain. Michelle would then force them to sit with this pepper spray all over their body for days without allowing them to wash it off in any kind of way. Even when they were allowed out of the green screen room, they were still not allowed to wash the pepper spray off. It caused extreme rashes. The burning pain lasted for days. But if that wasn't bad enough, when it came to the boys, Michelle would pinch their genitals until they would bleed, which is just absolutely disgusting. So she's now also sexually abusing the children as well. On top of this, she would also spank them, beat them, punch them, use weapons like anything around the house, coat hangers. She would pour paprika in their mouths. She would burn the children with lighters, and she would apply stun guns to their genitals, as well as forcing the children to have ice baths and forcing their heads underwater. And I'm honestly just lost for words. This is some of the worst child abuse I have ever come across, especially because there are so many children that she is abusing, and there have been so many reports to police and CPS about the abuse, and no one is doing anything about it. It's not like this abuse is going on behind closed doors and no one has been informed. It is just truly insane, this case. So obviously we've spoken about Michelle's 2 adult sons. We know that they are in the house. We know that they are witnessing the abuse. We know that they are basically Michelle's psychics. They are barking orders at the children, keeping them in control. And whilst they didn't carry out the direct physical punishments such as the beatings or the pepper spray, they are still complicit and they are still guilty of extreme child neglect. But that is not the only thing that they have been accused of, because it has later come out that these 2 adult sons, whilst they were living in Michelle's household, they were sexually abusing young children. Yeah, I'm really not kidding you here. Now, I just want to make this very clear that at this time, they are just allegations. Neither Logan or Ryan have been found guilty of these crimes. They are currently both still awaiting trial for these offences. But you need to know that whilst they are in their house, whilst they are living there, whilst they are being complicit to all of this child abuse, just as guilty in my eyes, if I'm being completely honest, they have also been accused of sexually abusing young children. And again, we do not know the identities of these young children that are making these allegations. We don't even know if the young children they are sexually abusing are the siblings, like the other children living in that house. It could be other children outside of the house that they are abusing. We just don't know. And this sexual abuse of the young children that they have been accused of happened on a repeated basis. And these allegations are absolutely disgusting. And if they are found guilty of these accusations, they are just as evil as their mom, Michelle. So at this point, we are entering 2019. The channel blew up in 2018, so we are getting on to a year now of the channel being super successful. Money has been rolling in for quite a while. Michelle has made a lot of money. She is getting sponsorships left, right, and center, and huge opportunities are pouring in for the family. And out of the blue, Disney phoned up. Yeah, Disney want to work with Michelle and Fantastic Adventures. Disney wanted to enter into a partnership with Michelle. They wanted a long-term deal to be a big sponsorship advertiser on their channel. And other opportunities from other big brands were coming in as well. And Michelle was literally seeing dollar signs. So what did this result in? It resulted in Michelle being harder on the children, pushing them more. The productions had to be bigger and better. She even traveled to California to put in an offer on a house because she wanted to move the whole family out to LA to live the LA lifestyle, to be surrounded by celebrities, because that's where Michelle could see her life going. But it turns out, thankfully, that dream didn't come true, because everything was about to come crashing down around Michelle. Finally, because in March of 2019, everything was about to change. And this all started when one of Michelle's adopted daughters needed to visit the dentist because her teeth were literally rotting away because none of the children brushed their teeth. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm surprised that Michelle even allowed her daughter to go to the dentist. But I assume because her teeth had basically rotten away. You could see that on camera, and maybe some people were making comments, and you know Michelle, she likes to portray the image of perfection, so clearly she couldn't ignore the situation anymore, and her daughter needed to go to the dentist. Now, when the appointment came around, Michelle asked her youngest biological daughter, Megan, to take the girl to the dentist. Now, do you remember Megan? She left the home a few years ago, and I said that she would come back up in quite a big way. Well, that is now, because because Megan, she is now 19 years old. And at this point in Megan's life, she had started to be a little bit more involved with her mum's life again. Apparently, Megan would come over to the house on filming days and kind of help out with the YouTube channel, help out with production, marketing, stuff like that. And because Megan only appeared on filming days, Megan wasn't aware of the abuse. Because on filming days, everything was all great, wasn't it? So Megan took the young girl to the dentist, and because the young girl's teeth were so bad, the dentist actually started asking some questions. The dentist raised their concerns about the possible environment that the girl was living in, etc. So on the way back from the dentist, Megan started asking the young girl about why she even needed the dentist appointment, what was going on at home, why her teeth were so bad. And as soon as Megan started asking the young girl all of these questions, the young girl came clean about the conditions that she was living in, the abuse that she was suffering. The young girl breaks down in tears in the car. She starts confessing about being abused, being starved, being locked in the room 90% of the time. And Megan was so shocked by all of these revelations. She had no idea that these were the conditions that all of these children were living in. So Megan pulled out her phone and she started recording the young girl making these confessions for evidence. The girl talks about being locked in the green screen room and not having access to a toilet, having to sleep on the cold, hard floor.
She locks me in a room, doesn't give me a blanket.
What kind of room is it?
A closet, and it's a tile floor. No carpet, just an empty green room. And she has a lock on it, so we can't get out to have to pee. If we have to pee or anything.
She talks about the fact that she is sometimes not allowed to eat for 4 days straight if she does anything wrong.
If we do something wrong, like drop something on the floor or something, she doesn't let us eat for at least 2 days straight, or maybe more.
What's the longest she's ever made you go without eating?
4 days. Straight 4 days.
No food and no water?
No food, no water.
And then she talks about the horrific pepper spray punishments.
Do anything wrong, she pepper sprays us, and then she makes us sit with the pepper spray on us for a whole entire day straight. When we were bad, my mom gives us ice baths, mini ice baths, not just one, mini ice baths.
Do you think any of the kids should live there?
No, I think they're not safe there.
So after Megan finishes recording this video of the young girl confessing to absolutely everything, Megan drives straight to the police station. And finally, the downfall of Michelle Hobson begins. Because after Megan makes the report to the police, authorities finally take the accusations seriously. They can see that the situation is potentially life-threatening and police head straight to the house. And they ring the doorbell, and you can see all of this on police body cam footage. One of Michelle's biological adult sons opens the door and the police officer says that they need to conduct a welfare check. And the biological son actually says, do you?
Hi,
how's it going?
Donnie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm with the Maricopa Police Department.
Okay.
We need to do a welfare check in this house.
Oh, okay. Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Where is your mother at?
She's upstairs. You wanna go get her?
Yeah, I can go up there and get her.
Okay. Mom!
So the police officer walks into the home and he finds Michelle in the home, and this is literally the first time that Michelle hasn't been warned that some sort of officer or authority figure is coming to visit the house. So she hasn't had time to prepare.
It's the police department.
Why?
Hi,
Can I help you?
I'm Donnie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to turn off the light on you. What's going
Do you
on?
mind if I talk to you?
Yeah.
You want to take the kids downstairs?
Yeah. Come on, guys.
We need to interview all of your kids separately, okay?
Okay.
So the officer starts walking around the house, and it doesn't take them long to start finding pretty much all of the evidence of the abuse and neglect.
You were the one that had the diaper on, right, baby?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you still have your pull-up on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Yeah, I got my camera!
You got one on too?
They find children scattered all over the house. Some of them are naked. Some of them are only wearing a diaper. They also find some of the children locked in their bedrooms. The rooms are completely filthy. There are clothes and rubbish stacked everywhere. Everything is cluttered and dirty and unkept. It smelt. The children also looked incredibly malnourished. They just looked ill. There was dark circles under their eyes. They just looked gaunt. All of the children stated that they were very hungry, very thirsty.
How old are you?
Are you thirsty?
And one of the officers actually took one of the children into the pantry and said to the child, what do you want? Like, you can eat something. Like, what do you want to eat?
You're safe right now, okay? So we're gonna protect you. Is there anything in here that you want to eat right now while we're waiting? Seriously, anything. Look, you got some chips.
And this poor girl was absolutely terrified, stood in this pantry, and she kept saying, no, 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 I'm not allowed to eat. My mom will smell it on my breath.
No, no. Now listen, don't worry about that.
She's gonna smell my breath.
No, she's not. No, she's not. No, she's not. You are not going to talk to mom right now.
The officers also found cans and cans of pepper spray. They found the green screen room where the children were kept isolated. And they also found piles of cash. Literally whole piles of $100 bills. Don't ask me why she has piles of money in her house. I don't know, but it just shows you how much money she has. However, instead of arresting Michelle straight away, which I'm like, why? Just arrest her. The officers do remove all of the children from the home and they take them in for an interview. And you can see some of this interview footage online and it's just truly, truly heartbreaking. Again, their faces are blurred, but you can see their bodies, you can see their body language, you can tell how terrified they are, you can see how skinny they are.
We have to clean, we have to make her food, we have to do everything for her. And every time we get in trouble, she hurts us.
They are so hesitant to answer questions, which I don't blame them because they don't trust the police. They don't trust any authoritative figure. You can also see the blind girl walking into the room as well with her guide dog.
And you can have a seat in that chair over there, okay?
Aww.
And Pilot will just lay next to us over here, okay?
But one by one, all of these children, they are so brave. They open up about what has happened to them, the conditions that they are living in, the abuse.
I did something wrong, and she sprayed me down here. That stuff burns forever. If we do something wrong, she doesn't feed us for like 2 or 3 days. Mom tells me to go take my clothes off, get a diaper on, and then stand in the corner with my arms up until I get beat.
And what breaks your heart the most is that this footage, it's just one child after another coming into this room. And there are just so many children that have been abused by Michelle. I have no words to describe how evil this woman is. I despise her to my core. So before Michelle was arrested, the investigation took place over a few days and Michelle was actually allowed to talk to her children over the phone. And I'm like, really? Have none of you learnt your lesson yet? Because whilst Michelle is allowed to talk to her children over the phone, she's actually threatening them. She told her children that she will hunt them down, she will kill them, and she will stab them in the neck. However, thankfully, the children didn't listen to Michelle and the interviews continued. And 3 days later, Michelle Hobson was finally arrested. And she was charged with 7 counts of child abuse, 5 counts of child neglect, 5 counts of unlawful imprisonment, and 2 counts of molestation of a child. And then when it came to her 2 biological sons, Logan and Ryan, they actually were initially arrested and they were charged with 7 counts of failing to report abuse of a minor. Logan even admitted in his interview that he was aware that the children were locked in their rooms, completely isolated. However, he wasn't aware of the pepper spray or anything like that. Logan also admitted that himself and Ryan actually had a conversation about whether they should report the neglect and the abuse, and they both decided against it. As adults, they came to that conclusion that they should not report the abuse of children. And eventually, after evaluating the law in Arizona, the authorities decided that these 2 grown men were not guilty of any offence. Oh, I have no words. The investigation stated that Logan and Ryan had no duty as a caregiver to their younger siblings, and because Michelle was always present at the home, they could not be held liable. Sounds like a load of BS to me. So all of the charges against them were dropped. And I just find this absolutely disgusting. Like, I literally have no words because these 2 grown men were aware of abuse towards children. They were aware of neglect. They witnessed this abuse, neglect for 5 years and failed to do anything about it, and possibly even participated themselves, but they obviously haven't been found guilty of that, so I can't exactly accuse them of anything. They got off completely scot-free, and in my eyes, they are just as guilty as Michelle because they did nothing. They sat on the sidelines and did nothing. But anyway, Michelle is obviously the true monster here. She is currently being held awaiting trial. And this is when the news broke about this case in the state of Arizona. And of course, it was huge news.
Were these young YouTube stars tortured and abused to get them to perform for the camera? Those are the shocking claims being made against their adoptive mom.
A woman who adopted 7 children and used them to make social media videos is now under arrest.
However, as far as I'm aware, the story didn't actually travel that far. Like, it wasn't actually a nationwide news story like a lot of true crime cases of this magnitude are. I don't really feel like it left the state of Arizona. I only found out about this case because of a documentary on Hulu, and I was completely shocked that I had never heard of this case before because this case is insane. It's one of the worst cases of child abuse in modern times. And on top of that, they had a huge successful YouTube channel. I was utterly shocked that I had never heard about this case before. So as the months rolled by, Michelle continued to plead her innocence. She stated that she never carried out any of those punishments on her children, and she actually encouraged people to check out their YouTube channel because you can see from the videos that the children are so happy. However, as more weeks passed, Michelle's health took a very sudden decline, and her health wasn't the best anyway, and she suffered a brain injury in custody. There were conversations on whether she would even be competent to stand trial. And in November of 2019, just 8 months after she was arrested, Michelle Hobson died awaiting trial in custody. And she died apparently from natural causes. She had ongoing heart issues and she suffered a cardiac arrest. So that was that. Because she died before she faced trial, there was obviously no trial. Michelle would never receive her punishment for the crimes that she has committed, and that is also why there are so many unanswered questions in this case, why there are so many gaps, and why we don't know all of the information on everything because there was no trial. The true extent of the abuse didn't get revealed. And then this story just kind of fell out of the headlines. And the prosecution, on one hand, was kind of relieved because obviously there's always a chance that someone will be found not guilty at trial, and then Michelle obviously could be released back onto the streets to harm more children. And also the other benefit of no trial is that all of the children wouldn't have to be put through that. They wouldn't have to relive that. They wouldn't have to face Michelle in court. But then on the other hand, Michelle died before she could be punished for her crimes. There's no justice in that. And also because there was no trial, the full extent of the failures in the system was never fully brought to light. And talking about failures in the system, I think we need to talk about that right now. Because even though it was Michelle that committed these horrific crimes, if CPS or the police had just done their job, this case would not be anywhere near as bad as it is. In late 2019, an internal investigation took place. Multiple mistakes were uncovered, and it's like, really? Wow. Are you sure? Are you sure about that? Multiple mistakes. Who would have thought? However, the reason for the mistakes were that CPS were under the impression that the police were handling the case. And then when it came to the police were under the impression that CPS were handling the case. So it's just a bit of miscommunication. And unfortunately, these children just fell through the cracks. Now, in my opinion, it's just people covering their backs because that was an internal investigation. I think we need an external investigation, if I'm being completely honest, because these children did not fall through the cracks. There were too many reports to use that as an excuse. It is clear that there has been some sort of cover-up here. Like, truly, especially that one officer that went out to the house. And we have the quotes from that report where the officer literally says in black and white, there are locks on the doors. There is abuse happening. The children are saying this. The children are saying that. And then all of a sudden, 6 days later, another officer goes to the house and everything is okay. And the allegations are unsubstantiated. I'm sorry, that is fishy as hell. I don't buy it. I really really don't. That young boy that ran away from home that was found naked in a neighbor's backyard, he literally begged a police officer not to take him home because of the abuse and the conditions that he was being held in. Are you really trying to use the excuse that he fell through the cracks? And there's just no excuse. There were dozens of reports made over a number of years detailing the abuse. This is one of the worst cases of incompetence and negligence and neglect from authorities that I have ever come across. And since then, CPS in Arizona have refused to release any of their documents, any of the investigation on this case to the public, claiming that they are confidential. Even though Michelle Hobson has died, the failings in the system and the terrible work of the people involved has never fully been scrutinized. And you might be thinking, well, did any of the workers that were involved in this case, did they suffer any punishment? And yes, they did. Yes, they did. And it's a joke. They were suspended without pay for 10 hours. 10 hours. 10 hours. They went without pay for 10 hours. And these children were abused for nearly a decade. How does that make sense? Not one person lost their job and they only had to go without pay for 10 hours. It's a bloody joke. Like, it makes me so angry because that right there tells you how much the authorities value those children's lives and the trauma that they have gone through. Because since this horrific case, all 7 of the children involved are so traumatized. They have got so much trauma that they are going to need to work through probably for the rest of their lives. They have had to be rehomed, which that in itself would have been very traumatic, especially because they would have been back in the foster system. That would have been terrifying to go to a new foster home. They also don't trust authorities. And unfortunately, the 7 children, they had to be split up. They couldn't be kept together. And we don't know any of the details of the children's lives today, but I just hope from the bottom of my heart that they are doing okay, that they are healing from this absolutely horrific time in their lives. And I just hope that they can recover from this nightmare. And I wish them all the best for the rest of their lives because they deserve to be happy. So now we need to circle back around to the 2 adult biological sons, Logan and Ryan, because obviously their initial charges for the abuse and neglect, they were dropped. But then in March of 2023, new allegations came to light. So since then, Logan and Ryan have been rearrested and they have been charged with several counts of sexual abuse. Logan, who is now 31 years old, he has been charged with 4 counts of sexual conduct with a minor. And apparently this took place when Logan was 20 years old and his victim was only 9 years old. This 9-year-old girl was only in elementary school and Logan is accused of sexually assaulting her on multiple occasions. And then Ryan, who is currently 29 years old, he committed his offences when he was 18 years old, and he has been accused of sexually assaulting a 6-year-old girl. And this abuse carried on right up until the girl was 9 years old. So that abuse went on for 3 years. And the brothers are still awaiting trial. These are just allegations. They have not been found guilty of these crimes. However, this is my opinion. I do find it suspicious that the ages of Logan and Ryan when they started sexually abusing children, 18 and 20, are the exact ages they were when they first moved in with Michelle. However, they're both still awaiting trial. There has been no updates on when their trial is even going to happen. There have been no updates for over a year. So obviously the trial is going to happen at some point, but we all know how slow the criminal justice system can be sometimes. Who knows when they will actually ever go to trial? If they will go to trial, who knows? Maybe the allegations will be dropped again. Maybe there'll be a plea deal on the table. We just don't know. There's just been no updates, so I can't tell you anything more than that. But of course, I'm going to be keeping an eye on their cases, whether they're going to go to trial, and if anything happens, I will let you know. And that brings us to the end of today's absolutely horrific, heartbreaking case. As always, let me know your thoughts, theories, and opinions on today's case, and don't forget to leave me your case suggestions in the comments down below because I always want to know what you want to hear next, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.